You see, I was always invisible to them. My sister made fun of my job until I exposed the truth. But the real shock? It wasn't just her mockery, it was the secret I was hiding all along. I built this business, but they tried to steal it from me. Will I take back what's mine, or will the family that abandoned me tear me apart for good? The opening hook blends the emotional devastation, betrayal, and the lead up to the shocking revelation, creating tension that will draw the viewer in to keep watching. The evening air was thick with tension, much like it had been for years. As I stood at the entrance to our family home, adjusting my coat, the soft glow of the dining room light beckoned me. It was supposed to be a simple celebration, my birthday, the one day a year I hoped for something more from them. But, as usual, the air felt thick, suffocating, and the smiles they forced didn't make it any easier. The table was set polished, ready for us to gather. The steam rising from the dishes was the only thing that seemed warm in this cold home. I had always been the invisible one, the one who was never quite good enough, never quite enough for them. But today was different. Today, I wasn't going to let them see how much they hurt me. Matilda, that's my name. In my early 30s, working as a waitress at a diner to support my secret role, an investor behind the family-owned Café. A cafe that, ironically, my sister Veronica always made sure to remind me she ran, the same cafe that should have been mine to help build, to grow. But no, I was just the waitress. The family sacrificial lamb, always taking the back seat. Tonight, I was about to face a betrayal I wasn't prepared for. Again, I took a deep breath before stepping inside, my heart thudding in my chest. The scent of roasted chicken and vegetables filled the air, and the familiar clink of silverware against plates seemed to mock me. My parents, all smiles, gave me their usual quick hugs, but Veronica, my older sister, was already sitting at the table, her head tilted back with a smirk, a laugh escaping her lips. "Matilda," she said, with a gleam in her eye, "how's the waitress life treating you? Still stuck in that job?" The words felt like a slap. I glanced around, hoping for a reaction, but nothing. My family, the people who knew what I had sacrificed, remained silent. I could see the mockery in her eyes, the way she basked in her own success. A success built on the very cafe I had helped keep afloat while standing in the shadows. She didn't see me as anything more than the help. And the worst part? She knew it. I smiled, a thin, strained smile. "I'm doing well, Veronica. Thanks for asking." But inside, my heart sank. Her laugh still echoed in my ears. The sting of her words lingered, sharp, like broken glass against my skin. Just the waitress. That's what she saw me as. The woman who never got anything for herself, always putting everyone else first. Always second to Veronica, the one who got everything. The dinner was supposed to be about me. But it quickly turned into a display of everything wrong with my life, the way my family saw me, the way they treated me. Every time they laughed, every time they praised Veronica's achievements, it was a reminder of how invisible I had become. I had been the one holding everything together for so long, silently, quietly. But today, it felt like I was being buried under their expectations, their mockery, and their indifference. And then, the words left my mouth before I could stop them. "I'm done being the invisible one." My voice was calm, too calm for what I felt inside. My parents glanced up, startled. Veronica's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "What do you mean?" she asked, feigning innocence, though I saw the challenge in her eyes. I met her gaze and said, "I've been carrying all of you for too long. I'm not your punching bag anymore. I've had enough." The room fell silent. I felt the weight of their stares, their judgment, but there was something different this time. I wasn't going to let them break me, not anymore. Dinner continued in a strained quiet, but inside, something shifted. My mind was racing, my heart pounding. I had just declared war on the very family I had bent over backwards to please for years. And as much as I feared what might come next, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. I had been walking on eggshells for far too long. The dinner ended with small talk, nothing more than surface-level niceties. No one addressed the elephant in the room. No one apologized for the years of neglect, the years of making me feel less than. But it didn't matter. The betrayal had been laid bare, and I was done. That night, I went home alone, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. Instead, I sat in the silence in my apartment, letting the events of the evening run through my mind like a loop I couldn't turn off. The humiliation, the anger, and the humiliation again. But in the quiet, I found clarity. I wasn't going to be their doormat anymore. I was going to fight for myself. No one was going to take me for granted again. Not Veronica, not anyone. I stood up, my reflection in the mirror looking back at me with new strength in my eyes. I wasn't broken anymore. I was going to make sure they regretted treating me this way. But I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of knowing it was coming. I'm done being the invisible one. They will regret how they've treated me, but I won't let them see it coming. The night after my birthday, I found myself sitting alone in the dim glow of my apartment, replaying the events of the evening over and over. It was as if my mind had pressed a replay button, each moment in sharp focus, yet still so surreal. The mocking laughter from Veronica. Her dismissive tone, it echoed in my head, louder than it ever did at the dinner table. I wanted to feel something else, anything else, but all I felt was an empty ache in my chest. The anger bubbled up first, like a boil about to burst. I clenched my fists on my lap, and for a brief moment, I let the rage flow through me. How could they treat me this way, after all I had done for them? The years of sacrifices I'd made, quietly holding things together, while they all lived their lives, indulging in their comforts. What did I get in return? Nothing. The sting of Veronica's words still burned. You're just the waitress. The cruel irony of it all hit me like a wave. She didn't see me for who I really was, and neither did anyone else. I had been the one always there, keeping the family business alive with my investment, but never getting any credit. I had been the quiet supporter, the one who stayed in the background, waiting for recognition that never came. And last night was the tipping point. My mind was foggy, clouded with frustration, but something in me was shifting. This was more than just a family squabble, it was a betrayal I couldn't ignore anymore. What hurt more than anything was that they didn't even seem to care. They didn't see how much it broke me, how much I'd been drowning in silence all these years, waiting for a moment of acknowledgement that never came. But now, I was done. I couldn't pretend anymore. The words, "you're just the waitress," kept running through my head over and over again. But I wasn't just the waitress, I wasn't invisible. I had to stop letting them treat me like I was. I had to start taking back control, but where do I even begin? I stood up and paced the room, trying to gather my thoughts. The weight of everything, the years of feeling overlooked, the constant comparison to Veronica's seemingly perfect life, it all hit me in one rush. I had been living in her shadow, accepting whatever scraps of attention they gave me, never questioning it. But now something deep inside me was shifting. I wasn't going to let them continue walking all over me. The anger was still there, but now it was mixed with something else. A resolve, a decision. I didn't need them to acknowledge my worth. I was going to prove it to them. I wasn't just a waitress. I wasn't just the family support. I was someone who deserved respect, and I would get it. I spent the rest of the evening unable to sleep, jotting down notes, things I needed to do, things I needed to find, the cafe, the business I had been investing in, without anyone knowing. They didn't even know how much I had put into it. I had kept the numbers quiet, kept my role hidden, but now I couldn't let that stand anymore. If they wanted to see me as just a waitress, fine, but I knew something they didn't. By the time morning came, I had a plan. It wasn't clear, but I was beginning to see the first steps. I needed to gather information. I needed to dig deeper into the cafe's finances. I knew there had to be something more, something that would expose their disregard for me. Veronica had always been so smug about her ownership of the cafe, flaunting her success. But the truth was, I had more control than she ever realized. I started making a list of everything I needed to do. It wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about taking back what was mine. I didn't care about the family anymore. I cared about what I had built, what I had sacrificed. And if they were going to treat me like this, then they were going to regret it. Later that morning, I sat at my kitchen table, drinking my coffee and staring at the list I had made. It was a simple one, but it held the key to everything. My thoughts were a whirlwind, but the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I wasn't going to let Veronica or anyone else tear me down anymore. I was going to fight back. I spent the next few days gathering every document I could find related to the cafe, everything I had ever contributed. My mind was set. I wasn't going to be the invisible one anymore. I wasn't just going to sit around and take it. I was done. The first email came on a Thursday morning. I had been expecting it, hoping for it, but when I saw the subject line, Cafe Financials from the accountant, I felt a pang of something else. Validation. It was the moment I had been waiting for. I opened it, scanned the email, and saw exactly what I had suspected all along. Discrepancies in the finances, unexplained withdrawals, mismanagement, and hidden beneath the numbers was something even darker: fraud. A mix of triumph and anger surged through me. I wasn't imagining things. They had been hiding this from me. All these years they had taken me for granted, and now I had the proof. I sat there for a long time staring at the screen. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. I had everything I needed. The cafe wasn't just Veronica's success, it was mine too, and I was going to make sure everyone knew that. But there was still more to do, more to figure out. How would I confront them? How would I get them to take me seriously? But the questions didn't scare me anymore. The only thing that scared me now was what I might do next. I woke up the morning after my confrontation with Veronica, and for the first time in a long while, I felt clear. The weight of what happened at the dinner still clung to me, but it wasn't dragging me down. No, this time, it was fueling me. The sting of her words, her laugh, it had left a scar, but it had also given me a drive I hadn't known I had. I wasn't going to lie to myself anymore. It wasn't just about the insult, it was about the years of being invisible, and I wasn't just the waitress anymore. I wasn't just the one who helped in the background. I had been the silent backbone of the family, and it was time for them to see that. It wasn't even about revenge, it was about making them realize how much I mattered, and I wasn't going to let them think they could ignore me any longer. I got out of bed and stood in front of the mirror. My reflection stared back at me, but it wasn't the same woman I had seen yesterday. This one had fire in her eyes. She was done with being overlooked, with being underestimated. I started my day with determination in every step. I needed to start taking control, not just of the cafe, but of my own life. The first thing on my list was to understand exactly where I stood, financially, legally, and emotionally. I needed to get in touch with a lawyer, someone who could help me figure out the next steps. I didn't even know exactly what I would do once I had all the pieces, but I would figure it out. For the first time in years, I felt like I had a real plan. By the time I was sitting at my desk, scrolling through my contacts, I had already mapped out my next steps. Contact a lawyer, look into my financial stake in the cafe, secure all the documents I could. I needed to be prepared for whatever came next. I sent an email to a lawyer I knew through a friend, someone who could help me understand the legal side of things. It wasn't a decision I took lightly, but I knew it was the right move. If I was going to confront them, I needed to have my ducks in a row. No more secrets. No more waiting for someone to acknowledge me. I was going to make them acknowledge me. The more I thought about it, the clearer my resolve became. This wasn't just about standing up to Veronica. This was about standing up to the whole family. I had been the quiet one for so long, but no more. I wasn't going to let them see me as small, as invisible, anymore. The next day, I dug into the cafe's financial records. I knew where to look, and I knew what I was looking for. I wasn't just trying to find evidence of mismanagement. I was looking for proof. I needed something concrete to show how they had been playing me. As I sifted through the documents, my heart pounded. I found it. Several discrepancies, payments that weren't recorded properly, and even some funds I had personally invested that hadn't been documented, but it was more than that. There was something off about the whole system and imbalance that made my stomach churn. I knew it wasn't a coincidence. I had always trusted the cafe to be a joint effort, something we all built together, but now it felt like I had been left in the dust. They had used me. They had used my money, my trust, and I hadn't seen it until now. Then came the bombshell. I got an anonymous tip from someone who worked behind the scenes at the cafe. They told me about some shady dealings, mentioning possible fraudulent activities that went deeper than I had imagined. The tip was vague, but it confirmed my suspicions. I wasn't just being left out, I had been kept in the dark. And worse, they were actively hiding things from me. I stared at the email for a long time, my mind racing. This was the break I needed. Now I knew it wasn't just about getting my family to see me. It was about protecting what was rightfully mine. I had been used, but now I had the power to expose them. And that was exactly what I was going to do. I gathered all my findings, every document, every email, every tip off, and started organizing them into a folder. This was it. This was how I would take back control. The anger I had felt earlier was still there, but now it was focused, directed. I wasn't just angry, I was ready. I had a moment of reflection before I made the next move. I couldn't do this alone anymore. I needed help, someone I could trust to back me up. I wasn't going to let Veronica or anyone else twist the story in their favor. I wasn't going to be the victim anymore. I was going to fight for what was mine, and when I met Veronica again, I was ready. I had everything I needed: proof, facts, evidence. I knew this wouldn't be easy. She wouldn't go down without a fight. But I wasn't backing down, not this time. I sat across from her, calm and collected. She looked at me a little unsure, as if she didn't know how to approach the conversation. She was used to seeing me as the quiet, submissive one, the one who always took the back seat. Not anymore. "You've been hiding things from me," I said, my voice steady, unwavering. "I know about the mismanagement, the funds that were never acknowledged. You thought I wouldn't find out, didn't you?" Her expression faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered, her usual smugness returning. "You're being paranoid, Matilda," she said dismissively. "There's nothing to worry about. You've always been too dramatic." I didn't let her words rattle me. I slid the documents across the table. "Take a look," I said, my voice cold. "This isn't paranoia. This is the truth." She hesitated, her confidence starting to crack as she scanned the papers. Her face flushed, and for a moment I could see the fear creeping in. But she quickly covered it up, trying to regain control of the situation. "You have no idea what you're talking about," Veronica said, her voice laced with anger now. "You're just trying to make something out of nothing." "No," I replied calmly. "I'm just making sure I'm no longer invisible. You won't get away with this." She stood up abruptly, knocking her chair back in the process. "You don't know who you're messing with," she spat. "I don't have to explain myself to you." As she stormed off, I sat there for a moment, a sense of triumph flooding through me. I had done it. I had confronted her, and I had proven my point. But there was something nagging at the back of my mind. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The morning after my meeting with Veronica, a new kind of clarity washed over me. I wasn't broken or defeated. I wasn't going to let her dismiss me any longer. The hurt from the dinner still lingered, but it had evolved into something more. It was no longer about the words she'd said. It was about everything that led to those words. The way she had taken advantage of me for so long. Now, I could see it. I had been invisible for too long, and I wasn't going to stay that way. I sat at my kitchen table, the sunlight streaming through the window, and I made a decision. I wouldn't let her, or anyone else, control my life anymore. I had spent too many years supporting everyone else, sacrificing my own dreams and desires, but all that was going to change. I was going to make them see me not as a waitress, not as the background character, but as an equal, as someone who had been there from the start, building everything they now took for granted. I started researching how to claim my rightful share of the Café, something I should have done years ago. The business had always been portrayed as a family-run venture, but I knew there had been things hidden from me. It was time to find out exactly what was going on. The more I dug into the cafe's finances, the more my anger grew. I had no idea how deep the deceit went, but I was beginning to put the pieces together. It wasn't just Veronica. It was all of them. My family had been using me, manipulating me, making me feel invisible while they took everything I had worked for. But that was over. I wasn't going to keep quiet anymore. I contacted a lawyer, a good one, and started to plan my next steps. This wasn't just about getting my family to respect me. This was about taking back what was mine, about making sure they couldn't erase me from the business they'd built off my hard work. I needed to gather more information, but I also needed to make sure I had a plan that couldn't be easily undone. As I left the lawyer's office that day, I felt a strange sense of calm. For the first time in years, I had a clear path ahead of me. I wasn't going to let anyone take control of my life again. I would fight for what was rightfully mine. The thought of confronting Veronica again was daunting, but I was prepared. I wasn't going to back down, no matter how hard she tried to make me feel small. The weeks that followed were a blur of meetings and paperwork. I scoured the cafe's financial records, diving into the details of every transaction. It didn't take long before I found the first piece of the puzzle. A series of unexplained transactions, money that had been funneled away from the business, and my own investments that had gone unacknowledged. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became that Veronica had been skimming money from the cafe, using it for her own benefit while keeping me in the dark. And then, as if the universe was finally on my side, I received an anonymous tip. Someone had sent me an email with a hint of something much worse. The cafe was in serious financial trouble and there were rumors of fraudulent activity. This was bigger than I'd thought, and I had the proof to back it up. I sat back, my mind racing. I had known something wasn't right. But this was everything I needed to turn the tables. I wasn't just going to confront Veronica anymore. I was going to expose her for what she really was, a fraud. With every passing day, I felt myself growing stronger. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me again. I wasn't going to stay silent. I was going to take control. When the day came to confront Veronica again, I was ready. I knew what I had to do. This wasn't going to be a confrontation where she could twist the truth or make me feel guilty. This time, I had the upper hand. I had the evidence. I wasn't just going to sit back and let her continue to pull the strings. We met at the cafe, and as soon as I walked in, I could tell something was different. Veronica's usual smugness was replaced with a hint of unease. She knew what was coming. I didn't waste any time. I laid everything out in front of her, financial records, emails, the anonymous tip. I watched her face as she scanned the documents, her arrogance slipping away with every page. "What is this, Matilda?" she asked, trying to sound nonchalant, but there was a tremor in her voice. "This is the truth," I said, my voice steady. "This is everything you've been hiding from me." She stood up, knocking her chair back. "You're just being paranoid. This is all made up," she shot back, but I could see the panic in her eyes. "No," I said calmly. "This isn't made up. This is what you've been doing behind my back. And I'm done letting you get away with it." Her face flushed, and for a moment I could see the fear in her eyes. But then she quickly recovered, her defiant attitude returning. "You think you can just walk in here and tell me how to run this place? You have no idea what you're talking about." I stood my ground. "I know exactly what I'm talking about, and I know exactly what you've been doing." She turned to walk away, but before she could get far, I stopped her. "This isn't over, Veronica. I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth." As she stormed off, I felt a sense of triumph, but there was still something nagging at me. I knew there was more to this, something I hadn't uncovered yet. But for now, I had won. I woke up that morning, the weight of everything pressing down on me like a thick fog. The conversation with Veronica the night before hadn't been the resolution I'd hoped for. If anything, it had only deepened the divide between us. She had tried to play it off, dismissing me as if I were just some nuisance in the background. But I knew better now. The time for silence had ended. Veronica's words echoed in my mind. "You're just the waitress. This cafe is mine, not yours." I had spent too many years hiding in the shadows, pretending my worth didn't matter as much as theirs. But I wasn't going to let that happen anymore. This was my family, my business, and I deserved to be seen as an equal. I wasn't some afterthought. I was part of the foundation of it all, and if Veronica thought she could just take it all, she was in for a rude awakening. As I dressed for the day, a quiet determination filled me. I was done being overlooked. I needed to confront her again, and this time, it wouldn't be with just empty words. I had something she hadn't counted on proof. Evidence that I had a stake in the cafe, more than she could ever have imagined. I spent the rest of the morning organizing my thoughts. There was a method to this. I couldn't rush in like I had before. This time, I needed to approach it strategically, to hit her where it hurt. I called the lawyer I had been in contact with and set up a meeting. As much as I hated admitting it, I knew I had to be prepared to fight. This wasn't going to be a simple family discussion. It was a battle for control. That afternoon, I finally stood in front of Veronica, my hands steady but my heart racing. The cafe was almost empty, the midday lull giving us a private stage for our showdown. She looked at me with that familiar smirk, as if she was still in control, but I wasn't the same person I had been the night before. I wasn't some meek, silent sister anymore. "I need to talk to you about the cafe," I began, my voice firm. Veronica rolled her eyes, as if she didn't have time for this. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, a challenge in her posture. "You're still on about this? Matilda, you're not cut out for this," she said dismissively. "You'll never have what it takes to run this place." I could feel the old hurt bubbling up, but I refused to let it show. "I'm not asking to run it, Veronica. I'm asking for what's rightfully mine." She scoffed, eyes narrowing. "What are you talking about now? You've got your little job as a waitress. Why can't you just stay in your lane?" "That's exactly the problem," I said, my words sharp. "You think I'm just a waitress, but you've forgotten something important. This cafe? It was supposed to be ours. You never told me about the legal claims you've made. You've been cutting me out from the very beginning." Her face hardened. She hadn't expected me to know. "You've got no proof of that," she said, though I could see the crack in her voice. "I do," I said, pulling out the documents I had prepared. "I've seen the records, Veronica, and I know about the ownership clauses. I'm not just an investor, I'm an owner, whether you like it or not." For a moment there was silence. The air between us thickened, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Veronica's gaze flickered to the papers in my hand, and I could see her trying to process what I was saying. But instead of backing down, she straightened, her anger flaring. "You think you can just waltz in here and take control? You've got nothing. No one will believe you," she spat. I didn't flinch. "I don't need anyone's belief, Veronica. The law is on my side, and I have the evidence to back it up. You can't cover this up anymore." Her expression twisted, but she stayed quiet. I knew I had her cornered. I left that meeting feeling a mixture of triumph and anger. I had put the fear into Veronica, but there was still more to uncover. The tension between us was just beginning, and I knew this wouldn't end until I had everything I was owed, but I was prepared for what was coming next. It didn't take long for me to realize the next step in this fight. I needed to expose everything. If Veronica thought she could hide behind her lies, she was wrong. I had already begun contacting the right people to help me: lawyers, financial experts, and even private investigators. I wasn't going to leave any stone unturned. It was time to bring everything into the light. I wasn't just going to sit by and let Veronica continue to run the cafe as her personal playground. I had a stake in this business, and I would fight to get what I deserved. A few days later, I was meeting with my lawyer again. The conversation was more intense than I expected. The lawyer had gone through the contracts, and he had bad news. There was an illegal clause in the agreement between Veronica and me. She found a way to cut me out, but that clause meant she had done so illegally. This was the leverage I needed. I walked out of the lawyer's office, a new sense of confidence settling in. I knew exactly what I had to do. Veronica wasn't going to win this battle, not if I had anything to say about it. The next phase of my plan began to take shape. I contacted a few key people from the cafe's business circle and arranged for a meeting. It was time to expose everything to everyone. I wasn't going to fight this battle alone anymore. I was going to bring the truth to light. The day of the meeting arrived, and I walked into the room filled with key stakeholders. Veronica was there, looking smug as ever, thinking she could still control the narrative. But this time, I was ready. I calmly laid out all the evidence, including the illegal clauses in the contract and my own involvement in starting the cafe. The room was tense, the air thick with disbelief. Veronica tried to discredit me, saying I was only doing this out of revenge, that I was just trying to take what wasn't mine. But I didn't let her control the conversation. I turned the tables, using my evidence and my own story to win the room over. They couldn't deny the facts. Just as it seemed like I was winning, Veronica dropped a bombshell. "Someone's been feeding her information," she said, glaring at the room. "This isn't just Matilda's doing. Someone's been helping her." The room went silent. The accusation hung in the air, and for a moment, I saw doubt creep into the eyes of the people in the room. But I knew the truth was already out, and nothing Veronica could say would change that. The weight of the upcoming confrontation hung over me like a dark cloud. This was the moment that would define everything, the moment where I would either take control or lose it all. The cafe, my family, and my future all rested on this meeting. I spent the morning carefully preparing my final piece of evidence. The presentation had to be perfect. I had everything I needed: the documents, the proof of my contribution, and the undeniable evidence of Veronica's manipulation. I had already proven that I wasn't just a passive observer in this family business. I was a core part of it, and now I was ready to make sure that was recognized. The stakes couldn't have been higher. I had spent years being overlooked, always the one in the background while others took the credit. Veronica, in particular, had managed to push me aside without a second thought. But now, as I stood at the threshold of reclaiming what was mine, I realized just how far I'd come. This wasn't just about the cafe anymore. It was about my place in this world and my right to be treated with the respect I had earned. I was ready to confront Veronica, ready to expose the truth. But as I gathered the last of my materials, my phone buzzed on the table. It was a message from Veronica, cryptic yet loaded with threat. It was simple but chilling. "I know what you're planning, and there will be consequences." I stared at the message, the coldness of her words sinking into my bones. but I wasn't scared anymore. In fact, it only strengthened my resolve. I had already come this far, and I wasn't going to back down now. The meeting was set for later that afternoon, and I walked into the cafe, my steps measured, my mind clear. The cafe that once held so many memories was now the battleground. I was about to face the woman who had betrayed me, and this time, I wasn't the vulnerable sister anymore. I was the one in control. Veronica was already there, seated across from the remaining stakeholders. Her cold gaze met mine as I entered, and for a brief moment, I saw the flicker of recognition. She knew this wasn't going to be the same as before. "Let's get this over with," she said, her voice sharp. But there was a crack in her confidence. She knew I had something on her. I took a seat, and without wasting time, I laid out the evidence, the documents, the financial discrepancies, the illegal clause in the contract that tied me directly to the cafe's ownership. I watched as the color drained from Veronica's face, and the room fell silent. "This cafe," I began, my voice calm but firm, "was never just yours, Veronica. You've hidden the truth for too long, manipulated everyone, and taken what wasn't yours to take. You've used me, pushed me aside, and now it's time to face the music." Veronica tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. She shifted in her seat, clearly rattled, but still trying to maintain control. "You're making a mistake," she finally said, her voice trembling just slightly. "This is all just a misunderstanding. You're not cut out for this." But I was already 2 steps ahead. "I have the proof," I said, pulling out the legal documents. "You've been embezzling money, funneling it for your own benefit while I worked my ass off to keep this place running. Your manipulation ends today." The tension in the room was suffocating. The other stakeholders were silent, their eyes flickering between me and Veronica. Veronica's facade was crumbling. She was trying to hold herself together, but I could see the panic rising beneath the surface. "Do you think you can just expose me and get away with it?" Veronica spat, her voice full of venom. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. I'll ruin you." I felt the heat of her words, but it didn't faze me. I was done being afraid of her threats. I had been underestimated for too long, and now it was my turn to take control. "You can threaten me all you want," I said, my voice unwavering, "but the truth is already out. There's nothing you can do to hide it." The room was still. Everyone was waiting for Veronica to respond, but she didn't. Instead, she stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "This isn't over," she hissed, glaring at me. "You'll regret this." As she stormed out of the room, I allowed myself a moment of victory. It felt good to have the upper hand for once. But deep down I knew that this was just the beginning. Veronica might have walked away for now, but I knew she'd come back with everything she had. The room was filled with a heavy silence. The other stakeholders were looking at me with a mix of disbelief and approval. One of them finally spoke up, breaking the tension. "What now?" he asked, his voice hesitant. I stood up, my confidence unshaken. "Now, we do what's right. We make sure the business is run properly, and we give it the leadership it deserves." The meeting ended soon after, and as I left the cafe, the weight of everything that had happened still hung in the air. I had won today, but the fight wasn't over. Veronica would be back, and when she returned, she'd be even more dangerous than before. But I was ready for whatever came next. I had taken the first step in taking control of my life, and nothing could stop me now. I stood by the window, looking out over the city below. The skyline was bathed in the early morning light, yet the heavy weight in my chest made it feel like night. The air felt thick, like the calm before a storm, and for the first time, I realized just how much this confrontation would change everything. There would be no going back after today. I had spent years trying to fit in, trying to be the one to hold everything together, but no more. I was done being invisible. Veronica's betrayal had shattered the image I'd once had of her, my sister, my family. Now, all that mattered was making sure I took back what was rightfully mine, even if it meant breaking everything in the process. The message from Veronica earlier had been a thinly veiled threat, but I wasn't afraid. It only reminded me of the stakes. This wasn't just about the cafe. This was about my life, my future. If I didn't fight now, if I didn't stand up for myself, I would spend the rest of my life living in the shadows of people who never saw me for who I truly was. I sat down at the kitchen table and began to write. My hand shook as I composed a letter to my family. I had to explain why I was taking this drastic step, why it was necessary to go to war with them. It was a letter I never thought I would have to write, but there was no other choice. The words came out slowly, carefully. I am not doing this to hurt you. I am doing this for me. For the woman I've spent years trying to become, but who is buried beneath all your expectations. It's time I stood on my own, and that means taking back what you've tried to steal from me. I paused, looking at the letter. A part of me wanted to tear it up, but another part knew this was the only way forward. I was no longer the woman who silently took the back seat. I was ready for the fight. As I sealed the envelope, I heard the buzz of my phone. Veronica's name flashed on the screen. My heart skipped a beat before I picked it up. I know what you're planning. Her voice was calm. Too calm. But you need to understand something. There will be consequences. This isn't just a business transaction. You're messing with things you don't understand. Don't go too far. I could feel the weight of her words, but I didn't back down. This wasn't just a warning. This was a sign that she knew I had her cornered, and she was trying to scare me into submission. But it was too late. The decisions had already been made. I'm not backing down, Veronica, I said, my voice cold and steady. You'll regret underestimating me. I hung up the phone, a finality settling in my chest. The showdown was inevitable. The cafe smelled of freshly brewed coffee and old memories when I walked in. The room was set up for the meeting. Veronica was already there, seated at the head of the table with the other stakeholders. I could feel the tension crackling in the air. My heart was pounding, but I wasn't going to show it. This was it. The moment everything would change. I stood there for a moment, watching her. Veronica looked calm, but I saw the flicker of nervousness in her eyes as she noticed me. Her facade was slipping, and I knew that this was no longer about business. This was personal. Are we ready to get this over with? She asked, her voice dripping with feigned indifference. But there was a tremor in her words that betrayed her. I took a seat across from her, my mind already set. This wasn't just about the cafe anymore. This was about the years of manipulation, the years of silence, the years of being invisible. I laid out the evidence in front of everyone, documents, emails, contracts, financial discrepancies. The truth was undeniable. The room fell silent as I spoke, each word punctuated with the weight of my resolve. You've been stealing from me, from this family, from the business we built together, I said, keeping my voice steady, even as my anger simmered just beneath the surface. You've been siphoning off money for your own gain while pretending you were the sole person responsible for this success. It ends today. Veronica's face contorted in anger, but she tried to mask it. This is ridiculous, she sneered. You have no idea what you're talking about. You were never meant to be in charge. You've always been the sidekick, the backup plan. You think you can just waltz in here and take control? You're delusional. I didn't flinch. You've been running this place like a dictatorship, Veronica. I helped you build it, but you never gave me credit. And now you want to cut me out completely. I won't let that happen. She slammed her hands on the table, her face reddening. You're not the one who's been making the real decisions. You were just the waitress. You've always been just the waitress. You'll never be anything more. Her words stung, but I didn't let her see it. I was done hiding. I was done letting her control my life. I may have been the waitress, I said, my voice quiet but firm, but I've always been more than you've given me credit for, and today you'll see exactly how much. The room was silent as I finished. It was over. Veronica's grip on the business, on the family, was slipping away. But just as I thought I had won, Veronica's voice broke the silence, cold and full of venom. You think you've won? You have no idea what you've just done. There's a reason you don't know the full story, a reason you've been kept in the dark. She leaned forward, a wicked smile on her face. You want to know the truth? Someone you trust has been feeding you information, someone close to you. You're not as in control as you think. I froze, the words hit me like a punch to the gut, someone I trusted. I looked around the room, my mind racing. Who could it be? Who had been feeding me information? The air felt thick with tension as I processed what she had said. The stakes had just been raised. I had no idea who I could trust anymore. The room was silent, the weight of Veronica's words hanging in the air. I had come here to end this, but now I was facing a new betrayal. Someone close to me had been working against me. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. The battle wasn't over. It had just begun. The silence in the room was almost suffocating as I stood there, ready for the final showdown. My hands were shaking, but my resolve was unwavering. After everything years of underappreciation, betrayal, manipulation, this was the moment that would define everything. My future, my life, depended on the choices I made today. I had fought so hard to get here, but the weight of everything was settling heavily on my chest. I could feel the echoes of the years spent invisible, the years spent watching my sister take credit for what I had built, but I couldn't stop now. I was at the point of no return. There was no turning back. Not anymore. I reflected on everything I had gone through, the late nights, the silent sacrifices, the countless times I had been pushed aside for someone else's benefit. It all led to this. If I didn't take control now, I would lose everything. And it wasn't just about the cafe anymore. It was about me, about reclaiming my power, and about finally standing up for myself. I prepared for the confrontation ahead, gathering my strength. I wrote a letter to my family, explaining everything how I had been treated, the choices I had been forced to make, and why I couldn't back down now. I wasn't just fighting for the business, I was fighting for my dignity. Before I could even finish sealing the envelope, my phone buzzed. It was Veronica. My heart skipped a beat. I had been expecting this call. I know what you're planning, Matilda. Her voice was cold, laced with warning. But let me remind you, this will cost you more than you think. If you think you're about to win, think again. The consequences will be dire. I took a deep breath and said, "You've underestimated me, Veronica. This time, I'm not backing down." She didn't respond right away. Just the sound of her sharp, shallow breath filled the line. "You'll regret this," she finally muttered, before hanging up. I knew this wouldn't be easy, but I was ready. I had waited long enough. This was the moment everything changed. The meeting was set. The tension in the cafe was palpable as I walked in, head held high. Veronica was already seated at the table, her arms crossed in front of her, looking every bit the confident businesswoman she had always tried to portray. But today, I wasn't intimidated. I wasn't the little sister anymore. Today, I was the one in control. "I hope you've prepared yourself, Veronica," I said, my voice steady, despite the whirlwind of emotions in my chest. "This isn't going to be easy for either of us." She smirked, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "I know exactly what you're trying to do, Matilda. You think you can just waltz in here and take what's mine? You've always been the sidekick. Nothing more." Her words didn't sting like they used to. In fact, they were almost laughable. I wasn't the sidekick anymore. I was about to show her just how wrong she was. I laid the evidence out on the table, every document, every contract, every email that proved I had been part of the creation of this business. It was undeniable. I looked at Veronica as I spoke, each word a strike against the years of lies she had spun. "You've been stealing from me, Veronica," I said, my voice firm. "You've been manipulating the family in this business for years, and I'm done letting you get away with it." Her face twisted in anger. "You don't know anything. You were never meant to be in charge. You've always been just the waitress." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "You want to call me a waitress? Fine, but I built this business with you, and you can't take that away from me anymore." She slammed her fist on the table. "You think you can just take everything from me? You have no idea what you're dealing with. I'm done letting you control everything," I said, my eyes narrowing. "I have the evidence. I'm taking back what's mine." She stood up, her face red with fury. "You really think you've won?" she spat. "You don't even know the full story. There are things you haven't even begun to understand." I leaned forward, eyes locked on hers. "I know enough," I said, "and I'm going to make sure everyone else knows too." Just as I thought I had won, Veronica dropped a bombshell. "You think you're in control?" she sneered. "You think this is the end? Let me tell you something, Matilda. Someone in this family has been feeding you information. Someone you trust." My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "You think you're the only one who's been playing the game?" she taunted, her smile cruel. "The truth will come out and you'll see just how deep this goes. Someone you trust is working against you." I froze. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Who could it be? Who had been feeding me information? The room seemed to spin as I tried to process what she was saying. I had no idea who I could trust anymore. The weight of betrayal was too much to bear, but even as the doubt crept in, My resolve didn't falter. I had come this far, and I wouldn't back down now. Matilda's heart was pounding as the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. She had everything she needed to win, but at what cost? The battle was taking its toll, and the emotional weight of everything she had sacrificed hung heavy on her. She had one final decision to make. Would she fight for control, or let go of it all? Would she walk away, or take a stand for herself, no matter the consequences? The answer was clear now. There was no turning back. She would face the truth, no matter how painful, and she would claim her power. The victory felt different than I expected. It was bittersweet, a mixture of relief and sorrow, a weight I hadn't anticipated. I had finally won, exposed the lies, and claimed the power that was rightfully mine. But the price had been steep. Every step along the way had been a battle not just with Veronica, but with myself, my family, and the life I had tried to hold together for so long. The aftermath of the confrontation left me standing at the crossroads of everything I had fought for. The cafe, the family, the lies that all lay behind me now, like a heavy cloud that I could feel but couldn't touch. I could breathe again, but it didn't feel like the freedom I'd imagined. It felt like a wound still raw, one I couldn't heal overnight. I sat alone in my apartment, looking out at the skyline, lost in thought. The weight of the past few months was still pressing down on me, like a stone in my chest. I had fought so hard for this moment, but now that it was here, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. What was all of this for, really? Was it just about the business? Was it about the family? Or was it about me finally being seen? I thought back on the years of being overlooked, of feeling invisible. The betrayal I'd endured, it wasn't just the cafe that had been taken from me, it was my worth, my value, everything I had given. And as much as I wanted to say I was over it, I wasn't. But I was standing here, and I was alive. I had made it. No matter how heavy the cost, I had fought and won. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, and my heart skipped a beat. It was a message from a family member, someone I hadn't spoken to in weeks. I hadn't expected to hear from them. Not now, not after everything. Matilda, I need to talk to you. I've got something important to share. I stared at the words, a cold shiver running through me. What more could there possibly be? The phone call came soon after, the voice on the other end hesitant but steady. Matilda, it's me, Aunt Julia. Listen, I've been thinking about everything that's happened, and I think it's time for you to know something. My stomach tightened. What is it? There was a long pause before she spoke again. I know you're angry, and I don't blame you. But there's an opportunity here. We want to offer you a chance to come back into the fold. There's a position, a role I think you could take on, and I know it would make a huge difference. I couldn't breathe for a moment. What was she saying? After everything. They wanted me to come back into the fold? To trust them again? I felt a wave of skepticism wash over me. And why should I believe any of this, I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I know it's hard, but we've all made mistakes. Some of us want to make things right. This could be a fresh start for you, Matilda. Think about it. I stood up from my chair, my mind racing. A new role. A chance to redeem everything that had been taken from me. A part of me wanted to jump at the opportunity, to take the chance to rebuild everything, to prove I was stronger than the past. But another part of me recoiled in fear. Hadn't I already sacrificed enough? I'll think about it, I said finally, though I wasn't sure what I was thinking anymore. Days passed, and I wrestled with the decision. The offer weighed heavily on me. On one hand, it felt like a lifeline, a chance to step into the future and let go of the hurt. On the other hand, it felt like walking straight back into the very trap I had fought to escape. What if it was just another way to manipulate me? What if I ended up making the same mistakes? I spent long hours thinking about it. Could I risk being vulnerable again? Could I trust them? Could I trust myself? I remembered how much I had changed in these past months, how I had fought, how I had finally stood up for myself. It wasn't just about the cafe or the business, it was about me. I had learned to trust myself, and that was the key to all of this. The choice, the future, it was mine now. No one could take that away. I dialed Aunt Julia's number. I'll do it, I said, my voice steady. I'll take the role, but this time, it's on my terms. She didn't answer immediately, but I could hear the relief in her voice when she finally spoke. You won't regret it, Matilda. This is just the beginning. It was the first step into a new chapter, but as I made the decision, I felt the weight of the past lifting from my shoulders. There was still so much to rebuild, so many relationships to repair, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I had won the battle for my future. Now, I was ready to take control of it. As I walked toward the new beginning, I couldn't help but think about the road ahead. It wouldn't be easy, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let anyone dictate my path again. I was free. And for the first time in my life, I felt in control